Now, here's Dominic Carter on Talk Radio 77 WABC.
And good morning. Dominic Carter here with you. You can reach me on Twitter, Dominic TV. I actually use some of the comments on air. We're taking your telephone calls this hour, 800-848-WABC, 800-848-9222. So finally, the White House warns protesters that Supreme Court justices must be able to do their jobs without concern for personal safety. Bears repeating. Finally, the White House, Jen Psaki, is warning protesters that Supreme Court justices must be able to do their jobs without concern for personal safety. Federal law prohibits picketing or parading with the intent of interfering with, obstructing, or impeding the administration of justice. And I want to share with you the actual tweet from the White House as it relates to this, because this issue is quite the serious one these days. The protest over the possible overturning of Roe v. Wade. And the tweet says, and I'm reading here literally, POTUS, the President of the United States, strongly believes in the constitutional right to protest, but that should never include violence, threats, or vandalism. Judges perform an incredibly important function in our society, and they must be able to do their jobs without concern for their personal safety. That's the tweet from Jen Psaki, the president's spokeswoman. How would you like to be in the shoes of U.S. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito, who we all know wrote the leaked draft opinion, and the justice has reportedly been moved to an undisclosed location with his family due to concerns for their safety. Listen, this is not about right or wrong on Roe v. Wade. It's not about whether we like it or not. What this is about is that Justice Alito did what he thought was right, if this holds up. And now we're looking at a situation of angry protests, Molotov cocktails thrown into offices of a pro-life organization in Madison, Wisconsin. I've been to Madison 3 or 4 times. Beautiful city. And look at what's happening now in terms of Madison. So the protests are continuing. And this all comes, and I have a number of stories on my mind this morning. This all comes as the Democrats want New Yorkers, and I want to slow down and be deliberate on this one. Democrats want New Yorkers to pay for abortions for out-of-state and migrant women. Democrats announced today, backed by Schumer and others, want New Yorkers to pay a $50 million fund to pay for abortions for out-of-state and migrant women. So in other words, let me try this another way. Another way here. Illegal migrants may take advantage of taxpayer-funded abortions in New York. illegal migrants. So New York Democrats from Schumer to New York State Attorney General Letitia James, they made the announcement today, legislation to protect and expand abortion access in the state. $50 million to go to abortion providers all across the state. And I want you to listen to the New York State Attorney General, Letitia James, and a woman from a pro-choice organization as they made the announcement today.
Every person in this nation should have the freedom to control their own body. Bans will not stop abortions. Bans will only stop safe abortions.
No one should have to travel hundreds, if not thousands of miles to get an abortion. But if they do, they need to know that New York is here for them.
That was the announcement made by the Attorney General, and we are about to start taking your telephone calls, 800-848-WABC, 800-848-9222. So James, an outspoken supporter of abortion rights, says, quote, "We want to be prepared." And I've said this night after night in case it comes up. I am pro-choice, but I don't support what amounts to be in some cases, what appears to be in some cases, birth control by abortion. I'm going to get to some of the other stories that we're focusing on this morning, but let's start with your telephone calls. Karen in Rockland County, good morning. What's on your mind, Karen?
Oh, you caught me off guard here. They were just trying. Our politicians, especially our leftist Democrats, should read the Constitution and their oath of office, because I think they forgot what that's all about. You know, they're only in it for themselves, and they forget about the rest of us. I mean, and separation of power. I mean, I can't believe Chuck Schumer wants to make federal law. The Supreme Court hasn't even decided yet, you know, officially how they want to go with this thing, and he's already wanting to do federal regulations. Separation of powers. I mean, they have no clue what's in that Constitution. It's embarrassing.
So, Karen, before I move on to some of the other callers, how do you see this all playing out as it relates to the abortion issue?
I think the Democrats put a wrench into this because they want us to forget about everything else and just focus on the abortion now. Forget about the border, forget about Ukraine, forget about the border. I mean, they just want to wipe all of that clean now just for this one issue. And that's the way they've been operating since Biden got into office.
Well,
and it's sickening.
Well, Karen, I thank you for the call. And, you know, it's interesting to Karen's point. And I thought about this tonight, folks. Whatever happened to who leaked this decision? Who actually leaked this? That becomes an issue. And why are we not hearing more about that? It just seems like it just disappeared. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out here that something is wrong with the process. And to Karen's point, and I've made this point many times, you know, folks, the abortion issue, what has come up, it's a situation where a smokescreen, where all the other issues, the litany of issues, are going to fall into the background. So, like, for example, just one small issue, right? So, of course, we can say inflation. But something that we know hits you in the pocket. Everybody, right? Gas, right? New York and New Jersey now seeing their highest average gas prices on record. Spokesperson for AAA says it now costs drivers in the United States an average of $23 more to fill up more than it did a year ago. A year ago. And so that's just one little issue. What about the more money for meat? What about the inflation? What about the southern border? And I still haven't forgotten those 13 soldiers that lost their lives in Afghanistan. What about that? And so the Democrats are now pushing to fund New York State $50 million to fund abortions. And it doesn't matter your income. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter your status, your immigration status. And that's just wrong. That's wrong. We are taking your telephone calls, 800-848-WABC, 800-848-9222. Let's go to Dino Justin. Well, we just lost Dino Just. Let's go to John in Staten Island. Good morning, John. You're on Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Dominic, I was going to mention we speak about the fentanyl deaths, but I want to mention one other deaths that occurred that Letitia James forgot to ask about. When we have 19 million black children will never have a life from 1960 to now. But let me remember this: it's 60 years, so we have 2 generations are lost. So when you had 19 million, let's divide it with 9 million and 9 million boys and girls that are dead. Now, if they had babies, there would have been, say, 2 children each. That would have been another 18 million children to the parents of those 2 kids. And another 30 years down the line, that would have been another 2 children with those kids in that. So we're talking about 18 million, 19 million. That's over like 50, 60 million black citizens never had a chance to have their lives here. And when I heard Letitia James say,
okay, but wait, but John, but it's not John. You're making a lot of assumptions with your the way you're multiplying the numbers here, and I don't. You're saying as it relates to African Americans, but this pertains to everyone. So why are you just focusing on the narrow scope of African Americans? John, are you with me? Okay.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What I was saying is, why are you focusing on just the narrow scope of African Americans?
Because the person who put Planned Parenthood together was Martha Sanger. She hung out with Nazis. She put these things in minority neighborhoods.
No, I get it.
That's a racist kind of thing to do?
Wait, what's a racist kind of thing? I'm sorry, John.
Martha Sanger bringing Planned Parenthood
but
children.
You've made this point before. I've heard you on this issue before. I thank you for the call, John. It's just that I don't think it's fair or right to just focus on one group and narrow your scope in terms of the question to just one particular group. Let's go to Dino in Queens. Good morning, Dino. You're on Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Morning, James. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Go right ahead, please.
James, you're a wonderful guy. I love you, and I think of Rush every day.
Well,
and I wanted to ask you, my question is, why is it not okay to protest in front of a justice's house, but it's okay to go to Carlson Tucker's house and protest and make trouble when he has children in the house? Why? What, because they're justices? Why? Please tell me why.
Well, I don't think it's right to go to Tucker Carlson's house with children when he has children and protest. I would want to afford all of us the not being protested at home. But in particular, Dino, as it relates to Supreme Court justices, they decide the laws or they rule on the laws of the nation. And they should not be influenced in terms of someone yelling outside their house, disrupting their neighbors. I just don't think that it's the right thing to do. So to make the comparison between Supreme Court justices and anybody else, to me, is not a fair comparison. Why do you feel that it is?
We're all human. We all bleed at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no such thing as that. And what I mean is, I know I spoke to you before. I did 7 years in prison, but that's not the point. The point is, at the end of the day, these justices let out criminals. So it's not okay. They do. They let out criminals. And I believe in, if you do something serious, you pay the penalty. And now they don't want to be protested? Oh, I'm so sorry. So
okay, your phone line is breaking breaking down there, Dino. I mean, I heard your point. I don't agree with it, but I heard your point.